What's good, everyone? Welcome back to another video on the channel, and today it will be the big video that I do every single year. We've got the 2023 AFL ladder and season predictions. We're going to be working from the bottom all the way to the top, starting at 18th spot, and yeah, let's get right into it. We've got quite a bit to cover. We've got obviously the ladder, and then afterwards I'll be going through my medal predictions, and I'll predict who wins the flag as well. So kicking off the ladder at 18th spot, and I'm sorry for all the Hawks fans watching this, but I got to put your side in last position because in the off-season, they obviously lost over 1,000 games of experience, and when that does happen, it's going to set you back quite a bit. They're now officially the youngest team in the competition, and it'll be a bit of a learning year, I feel like, for the Hawks. There'll be a lot of smashings that, unfortunately, they're going to have to undertake, but that's just what you're going to get when you got a side the youngest in the comp and you lose that many. Now, even though in the short term, it's not going to be the greatest for the Hawks, they're going to undertake a lot of smashings and be quite an uncompetitive side. For the long term, it's good for their rebuild. They want to completely redo their list from the bottom to the top, so letting go of the players that either want to leave to get some success or are just retiring is a good thing for Sam Mitchell. I do rate him as a coach, and they could contend in the next few years, possibly. But for now, it's going to be, you know, a bit of a long year for the Hawks. I think it's more going to be an exciting year in terms of looking at their new draft picks, such as McKenzie. It'll be exciting to see the likes of Newcomb, Moore, Mitchell, Day develop, get better, because I think that's what you got to do when you're on the bottom of the ladder. Just, you know, bleed games into the young players. Now, in 17th spot, I've got another side that you could argue are in a bit of a similar situation than the Hawks. Probably in a worse situation, to be honest, and that is the Giants. Now, of course, for the Giants, you know, they lost heaps of players in the offseason. We all know that Taranto, Hopper, Bruin, and Bobby Hill, all players that I believe are in their best 22, and players that you could arguably say that are heading into their prime of their career. So, the Giants letting go of players like that, especially when they need to strengthen their squad, you know, it's not great for them. It doesn't really give me a lot of promise. And obviously last year they were really disappointing, had a poor year in a year that I thought they could have made the finals. I mean, their caretaker coach put it pretty sweetly that they checked out, and it was a year where they did see them lose their coach. It also seemed like for the Giants last year, they lacked quite a bit of fitness at times last year, because in a lot of games they seem to be on par with the opposition, like in the first, second quarters, even ahead of them, like in that Freo game, they were ahead in the first quarter, but then I don't know, they just seem to always get run over late in games, and I saw that it was too much of a common trend for the Giants. And also, they do still have those star players in their lineup, obviously Kelly, Green, Whitfield and all that. Their constant loss of plays every off-season is a real concern, and it tells me that the Giants certainly need to rebuild, head into the draft, and just to be honest with you, just start over, because it's going to be a long road ahead for the Giants if they continue like this. Now, in 16th spot, I've got a team that is slowly going to get better, slightly improved, and that is going to be North Melbourne. They were the most uncompetitive, in my opinion, and disappointing side in 2022. And with how bad they were last year, you can only expect them to at least improve as seasons go by. There's no guarantee, though, that they will rise up the ladder. They could again finish bottom, but surely they can't finish bottom 3 years in a row. And I don't think with the likes of the Giants and the Hawks coming through that they will. They've obviously now got one of the best coaches in recent memory in Alistair Clarkson coming into the realm. So I think he'll finally do them wonders. I think North fans can actually have a little bit of hope now that they're heading in the right direction. And we'll see the Roos finally have, in a way, a bit of a positive future to look forward to. And if players such as LDU, Simpkin and Larkey continue to impress and have career best seasons, or all Australian seasons even, then it might speed up the process of North's rebuild, and possibly might see rise to become maybe a mid-table side. I still don't think that's going to happen this year, but you never know, possibly, if all things go their way. Now, coming in at number 15 spot, I've got a team that has shot up a few spots in my predictions since I went through my early ladder predictions, and that is the West Coast Eagles. Now, obviously, the Eagles, they were on par with North last year in terms of lack of competitiveness. They were just really, really bad, like some of their games getting done by over 100. But over the course of the season, they did manage to improve, seeing, you know, some more competitive outings where they were actually in games, and you know, essentially just not getting smashed as often anymore. And I think in 2023, they're not going to be as bad, or at least as bad as everyone is making it out to be. They're still probably going to be a bottom 4 side, but they're not going to have as many off-the-field worries, such as the COVID issues they had earlier last year. And their injury list was arguably one of the worst injury lists I've ever seen of any club in any year. That obviously affected them a lot last year, so, you know, their injury list this year will be significantly better. It's not like, oh, if it wasn't for their injury list, they probably could have made the top 8. Obviously, a lot of aging players, and obviously those players that are really past their prime. But if they can improve on a few areas, such as fitness, which was a real worry last year, as well as obviously bleeding more games in their youth, such as, you know, Oscar Allen, who's going to be coming back. And then, yeah, they may be heading into an upwards trajectory quicker than, you know, other people may predict. For 14th spot, we're heading into the mid-table positions. I'm going to go with Essendon. It's a spot that, to be honest with you, I don't really have a spot for any other team. apart from the Bombers, that is why I've kind of put the Bombers in there. Not necessarily saying it's going to happen or anything like that, but I just think it's just a spot that I'm just going to have to put for the Bombers. Obviously, last year they had a really disappointing season, finishing 15th, and a lot of uncompetitive performances. Some that stand out for me, you know, that game against the Blues in their 150th or whatever it was, and that game against the Power in the second last round of the season, just left a lot of Bombers fans scratching their head, because we saw what the Bombers were capable of last year. They beat the Lions, they beat the Swans, and, you know, we saw glimpses of what they're capable of, like their best footy, which in my opinion is top 8 footy, but we just don't see it often enough. And unfortunately for mine, I just think the Bombers are a mid-table average side, and if they want to be a finals contender, starting off the season well would be a good idea, because last year that start to the season was just really, really disappointing. Bringing in the likes though of Brad Scott for a new coach could also do them wonders, but for mine, I think this is more of a progression year, in my opinion, where Scott will take it slowly before really pushing high in the coming years for the Bombers. Alrighty, in 13th spot, I've got my first real major call, I guess you could argue, a side that in my opinion are going to slide down the ladder quite a few spots, and that is for mine, the Western Bulldogs in 13th spot. I think they're a side that will continue disappointing, and they'll continue their disappointing form on to 2023. That heartbreaking loss in the elimination final against the Dockers could actually affect the players mentally more than others may imagine, and I think I really could see them starting the year off with 1 win or less after round 6, because you look at their fixture, it's not easy, so they're going to have to, you know, come up against some top 8 sides and actually put up a few good performances. If they're good enough, they'll get those wins, but if they're not good enough, then I've got to line through their season after round 6. If the Dogs want to make finals this year, we need players such as McRae, Bont and Daniel to really step up after a pretty poor 2022. And they also are, unfortunately for the Dogs, a little bit of a concern. One of the worst defensive sides in the competition. I think they're the worst at defending transitions, and we saw that in a lot of games where teams, when they begin to play footy in their terms, the Dogs are just unable to withstand that pressure and prevent it from stopping. So they brought in LiamJames, they brought in Rory Lobb. I think there's some pretty good additions for the Dogs, but I don't think they're going to be good enough to take the Dogs into finals this year. I just see a bit of a drop-off this year. Now, coming in at number 12 spot, I've got the Adelaide Crows. Now, Adelaide are a side that I'm quite bullish on, and if you had a look at my latest video, you would see why. I think they're a side that are on the way up, and they're just continuing to develop, and they'll get better in the coming years. They're one of the best drilled sides and toughest to play against in the competition, even though they might not be up to scratch skill-wise. They're certainly a side that make you earn your wins. They're a side that you don't really want to be playing up against, I don't think, in 2023, and they don't often throw games in the towel, the Crows, and they don't often have issues where they see a lack of effort. I do genuinely believe they can win more games at home than lose, and if that does occur, then it gives them a really strong chance of competing for possibly finals. But they've got the addition now of Isaac Rankin alongside other players in the forward line, Rochelle, McAdam, obviously Walker. We could see the Crows increase their scoring, which was a little bit of a letdown last year. They can get better at that to possibly be a 2-goal better scoring side. Then, yeah, we could see them win a few more games this season, and I simply do think there are better sides this year competing for the finals. I think the Crows will steadily rise and rise a couple more spots with another pretty good year. Now, coming in at 11th spot, I have the side that I support in St Kilda, and no, I wasn't going to just be sitting here having them in my 8 because, quite frankly, I don't think it's going to happen, and that would just be too overconfident. I simply just feel like there are just too many sides that are better than the Saints this year, and yeah, at the moment, we've got a few worries with our list, obviously with the injuries, you know, in the off-season that we seem to always just get injuries in the off-season, and obviously this time around, Max King, Jack Hayes, at the moment Tim Membry, Jack Billing. So our 4 line is under real doubt for the start of the season, because yeah, if we aren't able to score in the first few rounds of the season, then that's the season done. So if we're able to hold on, score the absence of King and Hayes, and get enough wins early in the season, because we haven't got the worst fixture to start the season off, then honestly you never know, it could set themselves up for a positive season and give them a chance at maybe playing finals. They've also got the rejuvenated coaching squad and the return of club legends Hayes, Goddard, Harvey, obviously Ross the Boss. You never know, it might give them a whole new feeling in the club, strengthen their club morale ahead of a 150th year. But for mine, I think they're going to be another mid-table side. We always float around this 10th, 11th position, almost in no man's land. Hopefully it's not the case, but for now, I'm just going to have the Saints at 11th because it's sort of a safe bet. Now, in 10th spot, just missing out on finals, I've got the Sydney Swans. As much as the Swans fans will certainly hate me for this, I'm tipping them to continue that trend of sides that get smashed in the granny to fall out the 8. And even though surely it's going to stop eventually, until it does, I'm going to continue predicting it to happen, because not only that being a reason why I think they'll fall out the 8, people are also quick to forget how young the Swans actually are, and you can maybe make the argument they slightly overachieved in 2022, and if that is the case, it makes me feel that they could take a little bit of a backward step one season before they jump right back into the 8 and contend again. Midway through the season, I think after that Essendon game, they really were in doubt of actually making finals altogether, and I think after that game, I don't know, something within the club just sparked, and they were able to win like 7 or 8 of the next games and just push themselves into finals in the best of form. But if something like that didn't happen, then quite easily the Swans could have finished in that 10th position, and I just feel like it could possibly happen this year again. Don't get me wrong, I think the Swans are a really exciting club and a good club, that's for sure, and could certainly make the top 4. You know, you got the likes of Rowbottom and Warner that are just continuing to get better, but you've always got to have a few sides that finish in the top 4, top 8 that slide out the ladder. We've got to have a team fall out. I've got the Swans falling out, that's why. So a 9th spot now, just missing out on finals, I have the Gold Coast Suns. The Suns, again, just like I said in my previous video, really bullish on the Suns this year. I think they can certainly push for finals and take the next step. However, I'm not sure if 2023 is the year where they're ready enough. They're certainly capable, but are they ready enough yet to just make that a bold and locking call? Probably not. It's a 50-50 for mine. I had them in there, then I had them out. I had them in there, but then I have them out again. I think there are 8 better sides than the Suns. But that's not to say they're not going to have their best season in their club's history. I think they'll win more games than they lose. They were a much more competitive side compared to previous seasons. Obviously, last year we didn't see them fade in games as much as they used to, and obviously fade late into seasons, which we're used to seeing. They remained fairly consistent and were certainly in a lot more games. I don't really remember too many smashings the Suns were involved in last year. I think apart from like a couple against the Cats and the Lions, they were in most of the games they played the Suns, and I like the look of a lot of their plays. You obviously got Anderson rising up the ranks, could be at All-Australian this year. Took Miller, a very, very sneaky chance for the Brownlow. If he wins the Brownlow, the Suns are making finals. And of course, you got Ben King coming back from an ACL to complement the likes of Mabai Chol, who had a really, really good season in 2022. You know, those two could, pair up for 80+ goals in 2023, and I'm quite excited for the Suns. I think the Suns are going to be a pretty good side this year, and a side that you're not going to be taken lightly. They could make the finals, but I'm just missing out. Alrighty, we'll now be heading into my top 8, and the first side to scrape into that 8th position, I've got Port Adelaide. I think Port will just make finals this year. I think last year was certainly an underwhelming season. I had them winning the flag in last season's predictions, so that just goes to show how wrong I was on that one. I don't think they were quite that good, but obviously the seasons prior they finished top 2 and were certainly capable of doing damage if, they played their best, but, that 0-5 start obviously derailed their season, and they just weren't able to recover from that, because when you lose your first 5 games, you're playing catch-up footy, and they ultimately just ran out of legs. End of the season, I think new season, easier start to the fixture. They brought in the likes of, who they brought in, Brioli and Horn-Francis. I think Horn-Francis will actually really get around the conditions at Port Adelaide, and I think he's actually going to have a really good year. Could almost possibly be a sneaky chance for All-Australian if all things go his way. But there are a few concerns, though, that I have for the Power. I think their midfield's good, their foreline's pretty good, but the defence wasn't great last year. Players such as Aliir need to step up and go back to his 2021 form. I think it's been a bit of a common trend for the Power of the last couple of seasons. They can win against the poorer sides, the lesser ranked sides, such as the Essendons and Adelaide's end of the season. But when they come up against the best sides in the competition, the sides are going to want to be playing and winning against if they're going to be heading into the finals. They don't seem to perform as well against those sides, and almost in a way flat track bullies. So they've got to get better at playing against the better sides in the competition and beating those sides if they want to make finals this year and actually make a bit of damage. I think they'll just scrape in, but I don't really think they're going to do a whole lot of damage this year. Now next up, we've got the 7th spot, and for mine, I'm going to go with Fremantle. Even though they are going to drop a couple spots in my ladder compared to last, I think they'll still get a lot of improvement out of this year, and even though they'll slightly drop off ladder-wise, the competition around the Dockers, they're all going to be continuing to improve as well, and you're just going to have those sides that are just going to drop off a little bit. Not to say that they're going to necessarily have a bad year. I think, it could be a year where the Dockers drop off a bit, maybe finish 8th, 7th, and then the year after propel themselves to the 4. We've seen it quite a few times in the past. And I also think a few losses that they had in the off-season could possibly impact the Dockers and be a little bit tough to find a replacement for them. I think for mine, the Dockers, a bit of a question mark now, without Lob especially, is scoring. And who else do they have up there? Key forwards. I've got Tabner, and from the top of my head, that's about it that I can think of. Obviously, Jai Miss is coming through the ranks. He, gets some more game time this season. I'm not too sure exactly what they're going to do with Jackson and Darcy, but I guess one will just play a resting forward role when the other one is playing in the ruck. Certainly, though, for the Dockers, you can't underestimate their upside, and they've got heaps of promising youth, and I expect him. obviously over the next couple of years to rise up the ladder. And I think Brayshaw for mine, he could be a sneaky for the Brownlow. If he does win the Brownlow, they probably should make the top 4. Now, next up on my ladder, we've got 6th spot, and I've gone with the Collingwood Magpies. The Pies for mine are a bit of a mystery side. They could finish as high as 1st or as low as 12th, but I don't want to make the same mistake as I did last year and have them too low down my ladder, because we all know what happened last year. But I don't think they're necessarily going to be a top 4 side. It obviously goes without saying that last year was a season for the Pies where they just had so many fluky close wins. I know they weren't all fluky, but a couple, you have to say, were a bit lucky. And I just don't think it can be replicated again this year. I think it's going to be a little bit different. They're going to fall onto the end of some more losses, some more closer losses, which, in my opinion, will have them out of the top 4. I actually think that they'll be a better side this year, and they've bolstered their side in the trade period. They've got now Tom Mitchell, which I think will have a really good year, really good get for the Pies. Definitely needed to go for a player like that. They can get him more clearances, but yeah, I just think the Pies probably need to work on, finishing teams off a little bit more with more dominating wins. But you can't look past the Pies' commitment in games. They're probably one of the more resilient, if not the most resilient and committed sides in the competition. They're the sort of side, I feel like, this Collingwood group that could still finish outside the top 4, but could do damage late into the season and still possibly win a flag. I think that could happen this year with the Pies. Don't hate them like people think I do, but I think they'll fall into that 6th position. Now, Pies fans might actually hate this call, because in 5th spot, I'm going to go for Carlton. I've gone them to go 1 spot above the Pies, because simply I just feel like they've got the better list. They'll be a huge bolter compared to last year, where obviously they finished 9th. And yeah, the Blues have got one of the greatest lists in the competition on paper. You've got 2 reigning Coleman medalists in the forward line. You've got a reigning Brownlow medalist in Paddy Cripps. You also got Sam Walsh. And then in the defence, you've got players that could win All Australians, Doherty, Sard, Wiedering. And then again, last year, their best footy is amongst the best in the competition. And, they obviously, I would have to say, had a bit of a learning year in 2022. Now they've had that 2022 year, they'll know, what it's like to take it up to the best sides and what, top tier footy is like. They should be now more consistent in games this year, and will be getting better at the close game situation. They should be better suited to those situations compared to last year. But I still think they're a year away from at least winning a flag. I don't think this year they're quite ready yet. Again, they need to make finals first. They haven't made finals since 2013. Now, heading into my top 4, and to round things out for my first spot in the top 4, we've got Melbourne. I think the D's, they arguably have one of the best lists in the competition. It cannot go understated. I think anything under a top 4 would be a fail for them this year. I think they've got the best midfield in the comp now, with the likes of Grundy being added to their squad. Obviously, they got Max Gawn, Oliver, Brayshaw, Petrarca, Viney. Do I have to go on? Obviously, a great defence with May and Leave, and then they've got a good forward line. They've got Brown, Fritsch, McDonald, Pickett. So obviously, we can't question the D's list, but something that's a little bit concerning, though, from last year would be their finish. Obviously, starting 10-0 and then finishing the season 6-6, I think it was. They were able to beat the poorer teams. When they came up against the sides that were in and around them, they were similar to where they were in the ladder, up in the top 4. They weren't necessarily able to get the job done, because real issue for the D's, I feel like last year, was a bit of fitness. They failed to run out games, coughing up massive leads. I think it happened to the Pies a couple times, and the Swans. You could perhaps say that losing in straight sets last year will give them the motivation to be hungry again this year and strive for the flag. You could arguably say at the end of 2022, the D's, they got burnt out, but I think the D's this year, they should have a more consistent year. I'll be expecting them to make the top 4, and they should make the top 4 with at least 15 plus wins. In 3rd spot now, I have the Geelong Cats, and obviously coming off the back of a flag, they'll be looking to go back-to-back this year, the Cats, and there's no real reason why they can't, with their list only getting better. I know they got rid of Selwood, but they've added in Tanner Bruin, they got pick 7, I think it was, and they've also gotten in Jack Bowes, so their list is only getting better. I saw their hit out against the Hawks, and they looked almost perfect, to be honest. And the reason why I have them in 3rd and not in 1st is because, quite simply, it is just really difficult to go minor premiers twice in a row, and I don't think the Cats will be too worried about trying to finish minor premiers again, as long as they finish in the top 4 in order to have the best chance of making a run for the flag again. And I think they'll just, again, what they normally do, time their run late, again, perfectly to make the top 4. They might have a bit of an average patch in the middle of the season, lose a few games, because I think now, after last year, teams will begin to find out how to stop the Cats this year, so they won't have as flawless of a run. You could argue maybe a bit of on-field leadership could be lost now that Selwood's retired, but I don't think it will be that big of an issue. Now, a little bit of a different call here. In 2nd spot, I've actually gone with Richmond. I've got the Tigers rocketing up the ladder this year as a bit of a bolder out-of-the-box call. Now, the reason why I think the Tigers will have a really good year this year is, well, for one, obviously they're strengthening their already elite squad to bring in Taranto and Hopper to strengthen the midfield, 2 guns at the Giants. And they didn't have to get rid of anyone as a result of that. So, I mean, that can't be anything but a good thing. They addressed their issues really well, bringing those players, because their midfield was a little bit of a concern last year. Obviously, they were aging, and I think they were ranked 14th in clearances in 2022. So now they brought in those two players. They look good against North in the match sim. I think they're going to go a long way with those two plays. And they're also really, really good in terms of scoring. One of the highest scoring sides, if not the highest scoring side last year in the comp. Obviously got Rewald, Lynch. I think he'll be the best forward in the comp next year and kick 70 plus goals if he's fit and firing. They've got Shy Bolton. We all know what he can do. He can kick 50 plus goals in a season if he's accurate. And then we've got Dusty Martin in their forward line. He could kick 30 to 40 goals if he wants to. They've arguably got one of the most dangerous forward lines in the comp, the Tigers now, with those plays. And they managed to win every single game they played in last year after round 6, with the games that they lost were all being the close ones. And if it wasn't for them losing and choking those close games, they'd certainly be in the top 4 last year. So for mine, I think the Tigers have a good season and finish second. So if you've been following along in this video, you would understand who I've got in first position. And for mine, I reckon the Lions are going to finish first in 2023. The Lions arguably have the most threatening list in the competition now. Obviously, after bringing in Josh Dunkley off the back for best and fairest of the Bulldogs, they've got Gunston. We know how many goals he can kick if he's on. And then Ashcroft, he's probably going to be the rising star this season. They're going to be a powerhouse, I reckon, this year in the home and away season. They're going to win 10 plus games, I reckon, at the Gabba. Make that an absolute fortress, not as if they've already done that. And I think giving the captaincy as well to Neil and Andrew. I'm not the biggest fan of co-captaincy, but I think it's going to be better than having Zorko as the captain. I just didn't really feel like he seemed fit for the job. And obviously, we know how threatening the Lions can be up forward. They're probably going to be the most high-scoring side in the comp this year. I think, though, the only real concern about the Lions I can think of will be their defense. Players such as Andrews and Gardner, especially Andrews, who had a poor 2022, can lift in the absence of Adams this year and not leak as many goals. They really should be set completely for a possible premiership year. This is their chance now to finally go all the way and win the flag. Alrighty, well, those were my predictions from 18th to 1st. So now let's go through a few of the medal predictions. We'll start off with the Coleman medal, and I'm going to go with Tom Lynch. I reckon Tom Lynch, if he's got a healthy, fit season where he doesn't miss any games, then I think he'll win the Coleman medal. I think last year he kicked the most goals on average for any player in the competition. It was just that he missed like 4 games, so that's why he didn't end up winning the Coleman. If he has a fit season, I think he'll win the Coleman. The Tigers are going to be a really good side this year, so they'll get the ball to Lynch a lot of times this year. And if he can fix up his accuracy a little bit, because he can be known for missing those easy shots, I think for sure he's a good chance of the Coleman medal. Now, for Brownlow medal, I never really go for any players that have won a Brownlow in the last 3 or 4 years when predicting. So I'm not going to go for a Cribs, I'm not going to go for a Wines or a Neil. I reckon for my Brownlow, I'm going to go for Andy Brayshaw. The Dockers fans will love me for this. I think Brayshaw is set for a massive 2023. I know in my predictions I didn't have the Dockers finishing that high in 7th, but to be fair, if Brayshaw does win the Brownlow, as I said previously, I think the Dockers should finish higher than 7th, and yeah, he's just a gun. I think he's going to have a really, really good season. To be honest with you, for the Rising Star, it's normally always the person that's expected to win it before the start of the season, and as a result of that, I might as well just go Will Ashcroft as my Rising Star. It's a bit of a simple one. It's one of the few players I actually know in the draft class, and yeah, it's a safe call. I'll look back on this at the end of the year, hoping to get at least one of these medal winners correct, like I did last year with Dacos. Alrighty, now we'll head to the Premiership, who I think will win the Grand Final. We'll start off with the Grand Final. I'm going to go the Pies to make the granny, and they're going to be playing the Cats, so that'll be a massive game if that were to be the case. I don't think the Lions are going to make it, because they just seem to always choke in finals, and the Tigers, I don't know, I feel like someone will knock them off in the prelims. So the Cats v Pies granny, and I'm going to go the Cats to win it. I'm going to go the Cats to win back-to-back. I don't really want this to happen. I don't want teams to go back-to-back. It's a bit boring. It's a bit basic, but I genuinely believe the Cats are probably the best chance to win the flag from this point onwards, so that's why I've got them winning the flag against the Pies in a close game. Alrighty, guys. Well, anyways, those were my season and ladder predictions for 2023. Hopefully, you guys did enjoy. Of course, there'll be people that disagree with me, so if you want to give me shit in the comments, fair enough, because that's better for engagement. Of course, if you haven't yet subscribed to the channel, subscribe now. It's the best time to do so, as we are edging our way close to the footy season. In an hour from now, if you're just watching this as it's released, I'll be live streaming a few practice games on the channel. So feel free to tune in and give it a watch, and we'll see you soon in my next one.